Assassin's Creed has been a major franchise for over a decade. Release after release, the series never ceases to grow in following and in scope. Just when players think that the IP has grown to new, unbelievable heights, Ubisoft releases a new game that smashes expectations. This is the story of Assassin's Creed, a repeated demonstration of how to exceed expectations even in the wake of criticism of a lack of vision. It certainly has been a journey to get here, and they weren't always like this, but now it is clear that we should not look at Ubisoft as just that AAA developer that just shoves out ham-fisted games before they're ready, but rather as a leading developer with the best tech in the business of open-world RPGs. They've successfully reinvented themselves, and it is incredible. Allow me to explain in more detail. In 2015, we got Assassin's Creed Syndicate, which launched to mixed reviews, but featured a fully realized recreation of 1868 London, featuring a dual protagonist system allowing players to explore this world as either Jacob or Evie Fry. The game was vast, but it lacked personality. Each area blended together with its neighbor. The game's combat was a tweaked and more complicated version of the system that the series had been using since Assassin's Creed 2, which released 6 years before. It followed the same formula we had grown accustomed to: trailing missions, stealth sequences, synchronization, checkpoints, leaf piles for jumping into, some light customization, and a story that was interesting if you were a hardcore fan of Assassin's Creed lore, but failed to draw outside players in. In general, the game was good, but failed to do anything new or interesting. It was more of the same with a ropecaster thrown in. And so, going into 2017's Origins, the expectations were very high. The game was to be set in ancient Egypt, with what was essentially the entire country of Egypt set as the playable area. It was incredibly ambitious. Each area was unique. You could climb the pyramids, explore the Valley of the Kings, sail down the Nile, explore Thebes, or peruse the Library of Alexandria. It was, and is, a history nerd's dream come true. The graphic system was completely reworked, all new animations were added and seamlessly integrated, NPCs were given daily schedules, and the combat system was entirely replaced. Instead of a two-button system of strikes and parries, now the system was built on hitboxes, ranges, and spacing. You couldn't just button mash, you had to be tactical. If you were going up against a high-level opponent, you had to delicately dance around them, striking when an opening appeared, and then mixing in different elemental effects to your weapons. The game also tried to implement RPG elements into its narrative and gameplay, though the latter is where the overwhelming majority of this effort went. Players could play as a classical assassin, evading detection and only using melee combat when absolutely necessary, or they could level Bayek up to be a master of hand-to-hand combat, brute-forcing his way through difficult situations. For the first time in the series, Ubisoft was actively trying to give players as much freedom as they possibly could disperse. However, this was not perfect. It was made very clear by the developer interviews that Origins was a first step, as they called it. It was not the fulfillment of their vision for what Assassin's Creed was to become, but rather the first step towards that realization. After all, it is not easy to make a game, recreate an entire country set at 2 millennia in the past, and make it fun in the span of a few years, especially when you consider that Ubisoft had never done anything like that before. They were an open-world sandbox developer primarily, and so they set out to prove it was possible in Origins, and they did just that. But it was all building towards this moment. Every piece of tech that had been developed for Origins existed to frame and make this next game possible. That game was Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Odyssey has surprisingly not garnered much attention, likely because of one attention-hogging release set to drop soon after, but still. This game is, in my estimation, the most ambitious of any released by Ubisoft in their history, and that is saying something. It is a full recreation of ancient Greece and improves on virtually everything that Origins wanted to do. The combat has been made more robust than ever, featuring 3 different upgrade trees that can be leveled in concert or in isolation. The inventory system has been reworked, leading to less clutter and confusion. The dialogue systems are fixed now so that there are cinematic cameras for every single interaction, something Origins failed to accomplish. The graphics have been taken up yet another notch, the writing is better than ever, and the game is a full-fledged RPG with branching choices that have real consequences in the game's side quests and main story. Now, I don't want to go too heavily into each of these. After all, that is what I'll be doing in my long-form critique of the game. By the way, make sure that you subscribe if you would like to see that. Rather, I'd like to show you one clear example of why I freaking love this game so much. This is taken from a side quest you can do about 15 hours into the game called Family Values. The quest is very short, taking about 15 minutes to complete from start to finish, and it is easily the greatest side quest I've ever come across in a game like this, and I'm going to explain to you why, but be warned, I will be spoiling it. With side quests in RPGs, the goal is to frame the world and give it context while the player gets something to do. It isn't about having huge set pieces, crazy elaborate cinematics, or production values through the roof, but rather showing that the world you are exploring is worth exploring. It sounds simple, but is actually incredibly difficult to pull off. Just look at some of the open world RPGs that have tried to do this. The issue being that many developers think of these side quests as just more content, and those games usually suck. When RPGs succeed is when all interactions, all side quests, all main quests are grounded in the same world, and they make it worth living in. This quest does just that, with humor, wit, and a clever reinvention of an ancient tale, and it does so in such a casual way that it took me by total surprise and left me baffled. Now, before I explain it to you, I need to quickly explain the Myth of Oedipus by reading off of his Wikipedia page. Quote, in the best-known version of the myth, Oedipus was born to King Laios and Queen Jocasta. Laios wished to thwart a prophecy, so he sent a shepherd servant to leave Oedipus to die on a mountainside. However, the shepherd took pity on the baby and passed him to another shepherd who gave Oedipus to King Polybus and Queen Merope to raise as their own. Oedipus grew up with his new parents and then learned from the oracle at Delphi of the prophecy that he would end up killing his father and marrying his mother, but, unaware of his true parentage, believed that he was fated to murder Polybus and marry Merope, and so he left for Thebes. On his way, he met an older man and they began fighting, after which Oedipus ended up killing this stranger. He continued on to Thebes, at which point he found out that the king of the city, Laios, had just been killed and that the city was at the mercy of the Sphinx. Oedipus then answered the monster's riddle correctly, defeating it and in turn winning the throne of the dead king, and also the hand in marriage of the king's widow, which was, unbeknownst to him, his true mother, Jocasta. Years later, to end a plague on Thebes, Oedipus searched to find out who had killed Laios, and at that point he discovered that he himself was responsible, having killed him on the road while traveling to Thebes. Jocasta, realizing that she had married both her son and her husband's murderer, hung herself, at which point Oedipus then took 2 pins from her dress and blinded himself with them. Super bright and cheerful, I know, but you're about to find out why I bothered to explain this to you. Basically what happens is you are exploring Locris, which is the land of salt, when you encounter a young man named Supirio that has locked himself in a wooden cage. You begin speaking to him when he explains that he has just been told by an oracle that he's going to harm his mother and father, and so to save them, he has locked himself in a cage and asks you to go retrieve his sword from the town blacksmith Costa and his shield from a local thief who Supirio's parents seem to know, and give it to his parents so that they can defend themselves from Supirio. You agree and go to speak with the blacksmith, at which point he immediately begins flirting with you. I chose to flirt back because, you know, this is Greece, and very quickly established that I could have the sword if I, quote-unquote, made this a day Costa would never forget. The problem being, well, I'll let him tell you.
There's just one tiny problem. You see, my spear is also broken, if you catch my meaning.
Shame.
But there are special flowers in the forest beyond Xerxes' military fort, planted by Aphrodite herself. They really help to, reforge, if you know what I mean.
Fine, I'll get the flowers and you'll give me the spear. I mean, sword. Don't go anywhere.
And so we go off to pick some Viagra flowers for our dear homeless Santa Claus looking friend, and then upon return we sleep with the blacksmith to get the sword. We then go to retrieve the shield from the thief who's hiding out in a nearby cave, we kill her, and then return to Supirio. And I'll just let this scene play out.
Mystios! At last! Did you find the shield?
I did. Now you can protect yourself from the prophecy.
So, you found the thief?
Oh yes, cut her in half. She won't steal anything from anyone ever again.
And what about the blacksmith?
Oh, he's very much alive. We did things in the back of his workshop that would make Aphrodite blush.
You didn't.
This is awful.
Mater? Pater, what's wrong? You're safe. The prophecy's broken.
Actually, there's something we've been meaning to tell you. Supidio, you were adopted.
What?
A young couple brought you to us. They knew we'd give you a better home. That sword and shield is your inheritance from them.
Wait. So the thief and the blacksmith?
Are Supidio's birth parents. You killed his mater and fucked his pater.
But the prophecy said Pater would scream to the gods in agony.
He screamed, but not in agony.
Ah! Ah! You killed Mater and had sex with Pater.
Supidio, I had no idea.
I can't get the image out of my head. I don't want to see anymore. Ah! I'm blind, Miss Fios. Are you happy?
I was dying of laughter when I first played through this. What makes it even better is that most people are going to assume that Supidio's name is just a Greek version of stupid. Even Alexios and Cassandra seem to think this, given this line.
I should get this back to Supidio's parents before he does anything stupidio.
But no, it's Oedipus spelled backwards. This was such a clever twist on a classic tale that I can't help but say it's my favorite side quest I've ever played in one of these games. And the great thing about quests like these is that once you find one, you have to assume that there are many others out there that are similar. And so you keep exploring the world. It succeeds in justifying the world's existence to the player and makes them clamor for more. And this is just one example. There are literally dozens of quests that are just as clever and witty as this one was, but I don't want to spoil that for you. If you found this example funny and interesting, go out into Greece and find other stories like this. Embark on your own Odyssey. All of this to say, if you had told me, even just 3 years ago, that Odyssey would be what it is, I would have laughed in your face. But now, seeing what all of the amazing artists at Ubisoft have been working on, I'm left astonished. Not just astonished at how amazing their work is, but also how little praise they are receiving for it. This game is a miracle, a feat of design and engineering that is almost unparalleled, but many are dismissing it as just another Assassin's Creed game. Now, listen to me. If you take nothing else from any video that I make this year, take this. Give it a chance. Ubisoft has blown me away with Odyssey, and it is something that is so amazing I can't recommend it enough. There are still some issues, of course, and those issues will be discussed at length in my upcoming critique of the game. Once again, subscribe if you would like to see that. But for now, all I can say is that Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed Odyssey have truly done something incredible. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, and if you want to get some really cool assassin-themed merch, I'll have it linked in the description box below. But with all of that said, thank you guys for watching. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next video.